Not every hero wore a crown. Not every villain began in darkness. A boy king stood against corruption. A woman changed history with a single strike. A warrior hunted lions in the snow. One prophet spoke to a donkey. Another commander fought a deadly disease. And one angel fell from heaven into darkness. These are not just stories. These are the greatest miracles, battles, and legends ever written in the Bible. He was the most feared commander in Syria. Kings respected him. Armies followed him. But underneath his armor, his body was slowly dying, and the only thing standing between Naaman and a miracle was his pride. Naaman was the leader of the army for the king of Aram. In the 800s BCE, he was probably the most powerful military leader in the land of Syria. The king respected him very much, and his people thought he was a great hero because he helped Aram win many wars. He was a very brave man, very rich, and had a lot of power. But all his great success did not matter because of a terrible truth. Naaman had a bad skin disease called leprosy. In the old times, leprosy was not just a regular sickness. It was a slow and painful way to lose your friends, your place in society, and your body. Because he was a high army leader, he did not have to leave the city to live alone in the wild like poor people did. But the sickness was always there, like a ghost. Under his shiny bronze armor and fine clothes, his skin was dying. Every time he won a battle, he remembered the scary truth that his body was failing him. No doctor in his city of Damascus knew how to cure it. During their ongoing fights with the neighbor country of Israel, Aramean soldiers captured a young girl. They brought her back to Damascus as a prisoner of war. She had to work in the house of the great army leader as a helper for Naaman's wife. Even though she was taken away from her home and family, she did not hate the people who captured her. One day, she saw how sad everyone in the house was, because the leader was getting sicker. She spoke softly to Naaman's wife. "I wish my master could go see the prophet who lives in Samaria. He would heal him of his skin sickness." The words spread quickly through the palace servants, until Naaman heard them. He really wanted any hope of getting better. So he went and told the king of Aram what the young captive girl said. The Aramean king saw a great chance to save his best general. He only understood kingly power and money, so he decided to write an official letter to the king of Israel. He sent Naaman with a large group of people and a huge amount of money to buy the miracle. 10 big bags of silver, 6,000 pieces of gold, and 10 sets of expensive clothing. Naaman left for Israel in a grand chariot with many soldiers riding around him. He arrived at the gates of Samaria, the main city of Israel, and gave the letter from the king of Aram to King Jehoram of Israel. The letter said, "With this letter I am sending my servant Naaman to you, so you can heal him of his skin sickness." When the king of Israel read the letter, he got very scared. He did not see a sick man looking for God's help. Instead, he thought it was a trick to start a war. The king of Syria was asking him to do an impossible miracle. If he failed, Syria would use it as an excuse to attack Israel. Jehoram tore his royal clothes because he was so upset. He yelled to his helpers, "Am I God? Can I kill people and bring them back to life? Why does this man send a sick person to me to be healed? Look, he is just trying to pick a fight with me." News about the king's scared behavior traveled down the roads of Samaria to Elisha, the prophet of God. Elisha saw that the king did not have faith and that a big political problem was starting. So Elisha sent a strong, clear message to the king's palace. "Why did you tear your clothes? Send the man to me, and he will find out that there is a true prophet in Israel." The king agreed. and Naaman's grand parade of beautiful horses, heavy chariots, and boxes full of gold and silver changed direction. They drove away from the king's palace and went to the small, simple house where Elisha lived. Naaman stopped his chariot right outside the prophet's door. He expected Elisha to run outside, bow down to his high rank, wave his hands over the sick skin, and do a big, exciting show of divine power. But the door stayed closed. Elisha did not go out to meet the famous general in person. Instead, he sent a helper outside to the street with a short, simple instruction. "Go, wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan River. Then your skin will be completely healed and clean." Naaman felt deeply insulted. He had traveled hundreds of miles and brought a huge fortune. But the prophet ignored him and sent a servant to tell him to bathe in a muddy, slow river. He became very angry and told his chariots to turn around. He yelled to his officers, "I thought he would surely come out to meet me. I thought he would stand and call on the name of the Lord his God, wave his hand over the bad spots, and heal my sickness. Aren't the rivers back home in Damascus, like the Abana and Pharpar, better than all the waters in Israel? Couldn't I just wash in them to get clean?" Naaman turned and drove away in a rage. His pride was stopping him from staying alive. He was happy to pay lots of money or do a very hard task to earn his healing, but he did not want to humble himself to do a simple, unglamorous act of obedience. As the group of chariots drove away from Samaria, Naaman's servant stepped in. They talked to him carefully because they knew he had a bad temper, but they spoke with smart logic. "My father, if the prophet told you to do some great hard thing, wouldn't you do it? So shouldn't you listen when he tells you something so easy like wash and be clean?" The words broke through Naaman's anger. If Elisha had asked him to win another war or climb a scary mountain, Naaman would have done it immediately to keep his honor. Why let pride ruin his last chance to live when the rule was so simple? The 7 dips. Naaman told the group to stop at the edge of the Jordan River. The water was muddy and dirty, not beautiful like the clean mountain rivers back home in Damascus. In front of all his soldiers and servants, he had to do something humiliating. He started taking off his armor. He took off his golden helmet and the heavy chest plate that hid his sick body. Piece by piece, his identity fell to the ground until he stood exposed. Everyone could see his raw, pale, oozing skin sores in the bright daylight. He walked into the cold, muddy water until it reached his waist. He took a deep breath and went completely under the water for the first time. When he came up and wiped the muddy water from his face, he looked at his skin. Nothing had changed. He went under a second, third, and 4th time. The riverbank was totally quiet. His servants watched him closely as he dipped a 5th and a 6th time. When he rose after the 6th time, the truth was clear. The sickness was still there. God's plan required total obedience. 6 dips meant nothing if he refused the last one. Naaman closed his eyes, let go of the last piece of his pride, and went under the water for the 7th time. When Naaman came up from the 7th dip, the change was total. The scales, the redness, and the white patches were completely gone. The old story says his skin was fully healed. It became clean, smooth, and healthy, just like a young boy's skin. The river had washed away the sickness from his body and the pride from his heart. The free gift Naaman was full of joy. He and all his men went right back to Elisha's house. This time, he didn't stay proudly in his chariot. He walked up to the door, looked at the prophet, and made a great promise. Now I know that there is no true God in the whole world except in Israel. Please accept a gift from me." Naaman begged Elisha to take the silver, gold, and fine clothes. But Elisha answered firmly, "As surely as the Lord lives whom I serve, I will not take a thing." Naaman begged him again and again, but Elisha refused. He did not want to sell God's free healing. Since the prophet would not take any payment, Naaman asked for a special favor. He asked for enough dirt from Israel to fill the bags carried by 2 mules. He wanted to take it back to Damascus, saying, "I will never again offer sacrifices to any other god except the Lord." He also asked for forgiveness for one thing. When he went back to his job in Damascus, he had to help the king of Aram walk into the temple of a fake god named Rimmon. When the king bowed down, Naaman would have to bow too. He asked the Lord to forgive him for just doing his job. Elisha looked at the healed commander and said simply, "Go in peace." Naaman turned his chariots back toward Syria as a completely healed man, carrying bags of Israelite dirt to build an altar to the true God in a land of fake gods. But the story does not end with Naaman going home in peace. A dark shadow fell on this miracle because of Gehazi, the trusted servant of Elisha. Gehazi had watched everything. As Naaman's rich chariots drove away, greed grew in Gehazi's heart. He whispered to himself, "My master was too easy on Naaman, this Syrian man, by not taking his gifts. As surely as the Lord lives, I will run after him and get something for myself." Gehazi ran fast down the dusty road, chasing the dust cloud of Naaman's chariots. Naaman looked back and saw a man running. He stopped his chariot, stepped down to meet him, and asked worriedly, "Is everything okay?" Gehazi made up a clever lie. "Everything is fine, but my master sent me to say, 2 young prophets just arrived from the hills. Please give them some silver and 2 sets of clothes." Naaman was very thankful and happy to give back. "Please, take twice as much silver," he said. Naaman made Gehazi take more, packing a large amount of silver into 2 bags, along with 2 sets of fine clothes, and hid the stolen treasure inside his room. Then he walked into the house normally and stood before his master. Elisha looked at his servant, knowing exactly what happened. "Where have you been, Gehazi?" "I didn't go anywhere." Gehazi lied. Elisha's voice became very strict, exposing the ugly truth. "My spirit was with you when the man got down from his chariot to meet you. This is not the time to take money, clothes, olive fields, sheep, or servants." Elisha showed that greed had made Gehazi blind to how holy the moment was. He had turned a free gift from God into a dirty business deal. Then Elisha told him his punishment. "Naaman's skin sickness will now stick to you and your children forever." As Gehazi turned and walked away from Elisha, the terrible sickness hit him instantly. His skin turned white as snow, rotting with the exact same disease that Naaman had left behind in the river. One wrong movement, and she would die. A simple nomad woman stood over the most dangerous man in Canaan, with a wooden tent peg in her trembling hand. Beneath her laid Sisera, the giant warlord whose armies had terrorized Israel for 20 years. Thousands feared him. Entire cities obeyed him. If he opened his eyes now, she would never leave this tent alive. Yet Jael slowly raised the heavy mallet above her head. How did a woman living in a desert tent become the person who would change the future of an entire nation? This isn't merely a story about war. It's the story of how one quiet woman ended 20 years of terror using household tools. To understand how this dangerous moment happened, we must first understand who Jael was. She belonged to the Kenite tribe. The Kenites were peaceful desert nomads who lived in tents, raised livestock, and traveled seasonally searching for water and grazing land. They belonged to no empire and avoided the wars around them. Jael's husband, Heber, had even secured peace with King Jabin. Because of that treaty, Jael's camp was considered safe. Soldiers ignored them completely, and trouble never seemed likely to arrive. Yet beyond their peaceful camp, the land was suffering. Israel had endured 20 years of oppression under King Jabin and Sisera. Sisera's cruelty was legendary. He ruled through fear, crushing freedom wherever he went. Mothers even used his name to frighten children. He destroyed villages without mercy and seized farmers' crops, leaving countless families hungry, desperate, and struggling simply to survive. No one challenged Sisera because he commanded 900 iron chariots, terrifying machines that dominated battlefields and crushed resistance everywhere. People became so frightened they abandoned roads, deserted homes, and hid in damp mountain caves, rather than risk encountering Sisera's forces. Terrified families prayed desperately for deliverance. While everyone else hid from danger, one woman named Deborah chose to stand up. Deborah was an elderly prophetess filled with unwavering faith. One day, she summoned Barak, commander of Israel's hidden resistance fighters. When the message reached him, Barak immediately left his home in Kadesh. He traveled south to meet the woman everyone respected. Days later, Barak arrived beneath Deborah's palm tree. There, the prophetess was waiting with a message that would change everything. Deborah looked directly at him and delivered God's command. "Gather 10,000 men and march to Mount Tabor." She promised God would trap Sisera's army near the Kishon River. But Barak feared his lightly armed soldiers couldn't possibly win. Desperate and uncertain, Barak made a condition. He would go only if Deborah accompanied him into the coming battle. Deborah agreed, but warned him that the honor would not belong to him. Someone else would receive the glory instead. "The Lord will deliver Sisera into the hand of a woman." Barak ignored the warning. He simply wanted to survive. Barak gathered his men, and together with Deborah, they marched toward the Kishon River to face Sisera's seemingly unstoppable army. When Sisera learned the Israelites were actually coming to fight, he laughed openly. To him, victory seemed completely guaranteed. Confident and arrogant, Sisera assembled all 900 iron chariots alongside thousands of trained soldiers near the Kishon Valley. He raised his spear and ordered the charge. The earth trembled beneath the weight of iron wheels and galloping horses. But as the chariots advanced, darkness swallowed the valley. A violent supernatural storm exploded overhead and transformed the battlefield. It was a monstrous wall of water that flooded the earth in seconds, accompanied by blinding flashes of lightning that struck the iron chariots, turning them into electric traps. The peaceful Kishon River instantly turned into a roaring, overflowing wall of wild water. In minutes, the dry ground turned into a deep, thick, sucking swamp of mud. The heavy iron chariots, Sisera's greatest strength, became his worst nightmare. Sisera watched his invincible army fall apart in moments. Realizing the battle was completely lost, his pride was completely shattered. The great general did something no one ever expected. He jumped down from his beautiful chariot and began running away on foot into the blinding rain, desperate to save his own skin. His feet were bleeding from the sharp stones, and every time the wind blew, he jumped, looking for any place to hide from Barak's chasing army. This brought Sisera directly to the peaceful camp of the Kenites, and straight to the tent of Jael. When Jael saw the exhausted, muddy warrior stumbling into her camp, she recognized him instantly. She knew the treaty her husband had with his king, but she also knew about his 20 years of cruelty. She did not run away. she did not scream. Instead, she walked out to meet him with a gentle, welcoming smile and said,
"Thank you."
"Turn aside, my lord. Turn aside to me. Do not be afraid." Sisera let out a massive sigh of relief. He thought fortune was finally smiling on him. He stumbled past her, crossing the threshold into the dark, cool safety of her tent. But what he didn't know was that this little movement was going to completely destroy his life. Sisera lay on the floor, his body shaking from pure exhaustion, and his throat burning with thirst. He looked up at Jael. "Please give me a little water to drink, for I am thirsty." Jael nodded submissively. She turned to a leather container, but she didn't give him water. She wanted him to feel completely safe and relaxed. She opened a skin of rich, warm, creamy milk instead. She poured it into a beautiful, heavy, lordly bowl and held it for him as he drank greedily, spilling it down his muddy beard. The heavy milk, the warmth of the thick blanket she draped over him, and the sheer exhaustion of running for his life worked together perfectly. Sisera's eyelids became incredibly heavy. The tension in his massive body began to melt away into the soft rugs. But right before he closed his eyes, his paranoia flared one last time. "Stand at the door of the tent," he whispered heavily. "If anyone comes and asks you, 'Is there a man here?' you must say, 'No.'" Jael looked down at him, her face completely unreadable, and gave a soft nod. "Rest, my lord. I will watch." Satisfied, Sisera closed his eyes. Within seconds, the most feared man in the world fell into a deep, heavy sleep, his loud snoring filling the small tent. Jael stood over the sleeping giant, listening to the steady rhythm of his breathing. She knew that peace with a tyrant was no real peace at all. She knew that if this man woke up rested, he would return to his king, rebuild his army, and continue murdering innocent people. She had a massive choice to make.
She chose
Stay silent, play the role of a good host, and protect a monster, or risk her life to free a nation. She chose bravery. She moved with absolute silence. She knelt right beside his head. Sisera was turned on his side, his temple completely exposed and defenseless. She placed the sharp point of the wooden peg directly against his skin. She raised the heavy mallet. With all the strength in her body, built from years of pitching tents in the hard desert ground, she prepared to strike. The entire universe seemed to hold its breath in that tiny tent. The heavy wooden mallet hit the top of the peg with tremendous, bone-crushing force. The sharp wood pierced clean through the warlord's temple before his brain could even register the pain. With absolute determination, she continued what she had begun. There was no hesitation left in her heart. When it was over, Jael lowered the mallet and sat beside the lamp. Dawn was beginning to touch the tent walls. Jael stood up, pulling her heavy breathing under control. Her heart was hammering against her ribs, but her hands were completely steady. She wiped a stray drop of blood from her cheek and calmly walked back to the entrance of the tent to wait. A short time later, the loud, thunderous sound of galloping horses echoed through the valley. Barak, still leading the hunt for the general, rode fiercely into Jael's camp. He was searching everywhere for his enemy, his face frantic and his sword drawn. Jael calmly stepped out from her tent into his path. She didn't look afraid or panicked. She looked at the tired warrior and spoke with quiet confidence. "Come, and I will show you the man whom you are seeking." Barak quickly dismounted and followed her into the dark tent. When his eyes adjusted to the dim light, he stopped dead in his tracks, completely frozen in shock. There lay the mighty General Sisera, dead on the floor, with a wooden tent peg driven completely through his head. At that moment, Barak remembered the words of the prophetess Deborah. The honor will not be yours, for the Lord will sell Sisera into the hand of a woman. It hadn't been a queen in a palace or a female warrior on the battlefield. It was Jael, a nomad woman with a blanket, some milk, and a tent peg. From that day on, the power of the cruel King Jabin was completely broken, and the people of Israel finally walked out of their caves and returned to their homes. The land finally enjoyed peace for 40 years. Jael's name was sung by generations as the most blessed of women, the unlikely hero who had the courage to strike when the world needed it most. Imagine walking outside alone, and suddenly a massive object crashes down right in front of you. You walk closer, expecting to see a rock, but instead, you find a man in a black robe. This is Satan, once known as Lucifer. He had everything a man could want: wisdom, beauty, and power. But Lucifer wasn't satisfied. He wanted more, a higher power, but that desire would one day cost him his own life. Before humans existed, the universe was a massive, quiet space of spirit and light. Heaven was the center of it all, crowded with millions of angels. These weren't fluffy creatures with wings. They were living spirits of intense power, speed, and intelligence. God organized them into different ranks, giving each group a specific job to keep the entire heavenly kingdom running in perfect harmony. Among all these millions of spirits, God created one angel who stood far above the rest. His name was Lucifer. Lucifer's name meant the light bearer, the morning star. When God made him, he gave him the highest and most important job a created being could ever hold. Lucifer was appointed as the main guardian angel of the throne. His job was to stand right next to the presence of God and lead the entire kingdom in worship. Because he stood so close to the ultimate light, Lucifer was completely covered in a brilliant glow and decorated with beautiful, flashing gems. Furthermore, his voice was unlike any other. When he spoke or sang, it sounded like an entire orchestra playing in perfect sync. For a very long time, heaven was completely peaceful. There was no sadness, no anger, and no jealousy. Every day followed a perfect rhythm. Lucifer would lift his voice to start a song. The millions of angels would join in. A massive wave of praise would hit the throne, and God would look upon his creation with delight.
Millions of angels would join him.
But then, something inside Lucifer began to change. Every time Lucifer walked by, he could see himself. He started spending more and more time looking at his own reflection. He noticed how beautifully his gems caught the light of the throne, making him flash with brilliant colors.
I truly am magnificent.
He listened to the incredible tone of his own voice and realized it sounded better than any other angel's voice in existence. He felt the immense power vibrating through his spirit. Instead of looking at the throne and thinking, "Look how great my Creator is," Lucifer started looking at his reflection and thinking, "Look how great I am." The beauty that was given to him as a gift became a trap. He became incredibly proud. He looked at his own wisdom and talent and used them to fuel his own ego. He started to think that the praise he was leading shouldn't go past him to the throne anymore. He thought the music should stop at him. Inside his mind, away from the eyes of the other angels, a secret ambition began to grow. He didn't want to be a servant anymore, even if he was the highest servant in the universe. He wanted to be the master. He wanted the throne. He wanted the crown, and he wanted the worship. But Lucifer was smart. He knew he couldn't just walk up and attack God by himself. God was all-powerful, and a one-man attack would end instantly. If Lucifer was going to make a real move for the throne, he needed an army. He needed a massive number of angels to back him up so he could overwhelm the kingdom. So the light bearer decided to become a politician. He started sneaking around the different areas of heaven, visiting the various ranks of angels in secret. He used his beautiful voice and his incredible intellect to twist the truth and plant seeds of doubt. He would find a group of angels working in their assigned stations, sit down with them, and act like a concerned friend. He would say things like, "Why do we have to follow all these strict rules day after day? Look at how strong you are. Look at your power. Why does the Creator get all the credit and all the worship, while we do all the hard work? Don't you want to see what else you're capable of?"
Let me show you.
He was very convincing. He didn't sound angry or evil. He sounded like a brave leader who truly cared about their freedom. He told them that God was holding them back from their true potential. He promised them that if they joined him, he would eliminate the rules, give them higher positions, and grant them total independence. He went to the warrior angels first. These were the strongest spirits, built for power and execution. "You have the power to rule worlds," he whispered. "Why do you allow yourselves to be treated as simple gods? Join me, and you will be generals in a new kingdom." The warrior angels listened, and some of them felt a spark of ambition they had never felt before.
Power into their ears.
Next,
Follow me.
Lucifer went to the angels of wisdom and knowledge. He told them that God was keeping secrets from them, limiting what they were allowed to understand. True wisdom means having no boundaries, Lucifer argued. "If you stay here, you will only ever know what you are told. If you come with me, we will explore the deepest mysteries of existence on our own terms." These intelligent spirits began to question their purpose, looking at Lucifer as a champion of free thought. Day after day, week after week, Lucifer kept up the secret campaign. His whispers spread through the valleys and mountains of heaven like a slow, contagious disease. He went from group to group, carefully picking his targets, finding angels who were easily flattered or who wanted more recognition. He created secret meeting places in the far reaches of heaven where his growing number of followers could gather to complain about God's laws and plan their next moves. Slowly, the beautiful harmony of heaven began to crack. The daily songs of praise felt heavier and less genuine. A strange tension filled the air, and a division started to form that had never existed since the beginning of time. Angels who used to work together in perfect unity now looked at each other with suspicion. The loyal angels could feel that something was wrong, but Lucifer was so clever that he kept his tracks covered, always pretending to be the faithful worship leader whenever he was near the throne. In the end, Lucifer's plan worked perfectly. 1/3 of all the angels in heaven believed his lies. Millions of powerful spirit warriors turned their backs on their creator and swore their total loyalty to the morning star. They stopped looking at the throne for guidance and started looking entirely to Lucifer for their orders. Lucifer looked at the massive army he had built in secret. He saw millions of shining spirits ready to fight and die for him. He saw commanders, warriors, and thinkers all standing under his banner. He decided he didn't need to hide in the shadows or whisper in secret corners anymore. The time for talking was over. It was time to make his move and take what he believed was rightfully his. Lucifer stepped out onto the open golden expanses of heaven. He walked right past his designated guard post, pointed his finger directly at the throne of God, and declared war. The sound of his defiance echoed across the entire spiritual realm, shocking the heavens. On the other side of heaven, the loyal angels didn't hesitate. They quickly moved into action to defend the honor of their king. Their leader was Michael, a fierce, quiet, and completely faithful archangel.
Heaven belongs to the Most High.
Michael didn't have the flashy jewels that Lucifer had, but he was clothed in the unyielding power of God's justice. He blew a mighty horn that signaled the gathering of the righteous hosts. Behind Michael stood the remaining two-thirds of the heavenly host. They formed a massive sea of shining light, ready to drive the rebels out. The two sides faced each other on the grand plains of heaven. On one side stood Lucifer, full of pride and arrogance, backed by millions of rebel angels who wanted to take over the universe. On the other side stood Michael, calm and resolute, backed by a massive army of loyal servants. The contrast was sharp. One army fought for self-glory and pride, while the other fought out of pure love and loyalty to their creator. The silence broke and the two armies charged. The battle that followed was wild, chaotic, and terrifying. Because angels are spirits, they didn't fight with iron swords, shields, or wooden chariots. They fought with raw spiritual energy, pure force. Lightning crashed across the sky continuously, and the very foundations of the spiritual realm shook violently as the two massive forces collided. The sky above heaven turned into a swirling storm of bright gold and deep, dark purples as the opposing energies slammed into one another. Lucifer fought with a desperation fueled by pure rage. He truly believed his own hype. He believed he was smart enough and strong enough to win. He tore through the lines of the loyal angels, desperately trying to cut a path straight to the throne so he could rip the crown away from God. His fallen angels fought right beside him, striking out against their former brothers with dark, twisted energy. Lucifer himself was a whirlwind of destruction, using his immense power to blast away anyone who stood in his path. But Michael and his army stood like a solid, unbreakable wall of fire. They didn't move for fame or power. They moved with the weight of absolute truth behind them. No matter how hard Lucifer pushed, no matter how much rage he poured into his attacks, he could not force them to give ground. Every time a rebel angel struck, the loyal angels answered with a counterattack that was fueled by the very strength of God. Michael was fighting with the direct authority of the Creator, and that power was impossible to beat. The simple truth of the universe was asserting itself. A created being can never defeat the mind that created him. The war raged on across the heavenly plains, lasting for what felt like ages in the spiritual realm. The ground was torn apart by the sheer force of the clashing spirits. But slowly, the tide began to turn. Lucifer's immense strength began to run out. His brilliant mind turned to confusion as his strategies failed, one by one. Lucifer's rebel army started to realize they were losing, and panic began to spread through their ranks under the steady, crushing advance of Michael's forces. The confidence they had when they were listening to Lucifer's whispers vanished when they faced the raw reality of God's justice. The rebel lines began to fracture. Warriors turned and ran, looking for a place to hide. But there was nowhere to hide in the open light of heaven. Finally, Michael found Lucifer in the middle of the chaos. The two greatest angels of heaven faced each other directly. Lucifer lunged forward with all the anger and hatred left in his spirit. But Michael bypassed the attack with ease. With the authority given to him by the king, Michael delivered the decisive, crushing blow. Lucifer was completely defeated. His rebellion was broken, his weapons were shattered, and his lines completely collapsed. The gates of heaven flew open, and Michael drove the rebels toward the edge. Lucifer was physically thrown out of the kingdom. The entire universe watched in absolute silence as the highest angel fell from the sky like a bright flash of lightning. As he fell farther and farther away from the throne and the presence of God, his appearance began to change drastically. The beautiful gems that decorated his body cracked, shattered, and turned into dull, black coal. The musical instruments built into his voice broke, turning his beautiful melodies into a twisted, screeching wail of eternal hatred and regret.
Once made him beautiful.
He was stripped of everything that made him beautiful, leaving behind only the ugly reality of his pride. A heavy, suffocating darkness wrapped around him as he tumbled through the stars, crashing down into a deep, empty abyss, completely separated from the glory of heaven.
Like dying stars.
His millions of rebel angels rained down right behind him, falling like a shower of dying stars into the dark void below. The fall felt endless, a physical representation of how far they had dropped from grace. Up in heaven, the air instantly became pure, clean, and peaceful again. The dark storm clouds of rebellion cleared away, and the golden light of the throne shone brightly across the landscape once more.
From the heavens.
The tension vanished entirely. The loyal angels cheered, celebrated, and burst into magnificent songs of victory. The harmony returned, sweeter and more powerful than ever before, because the prideful distraction was gone. The ranks were closed, and heaven was made whole again. But deep down in the dark, empty places of the lower universe, Lucifer landed. He was no longer the light-bearer. He was now Satan, the adversary. He was the devil. He sat in the darkness of the pit, bruised, battered, and completely stripped of his glory. He looked up at the distant, unreachable light of heaven, and his heart filled with a deep, permanent hatred. He knew his beauty was gone forever. He knew his power was limited, and he knew his final destination was total destruction. The realization of his failure drove him insane with bitter anger, but he wasn't going to stop fighting. His pride wouldn't let him admit defeat even now when he was broken and cast out. He gathered his fallen angels around him in the dark, organizing them into a new kingdom of shadows. Since he knew he could never go back to heaven and could never defeat God directly in a physical fight, he formulated a new, wicked plan. He decided he would look for God's next creation, the human beings made of dust and earth. He knew how much God loved them, and he knew that God had special plans for them to rule over the physical world. Lucifer decided he would target them. If he couldn't hurt God's throne, he would hurt God's heart by tricking his human children into falling into the darkness with him. He swore an oath in the dark that he would destroy everything good that God made. He would use the same lies that worked on the angels, promises of false freedom, pride, and independence, to trick humans into turning their backs on the Creator. And so, the star that was meant to lead the morning chose to become the king of the night, spending the rest of history trying to drag the rest of the world down into his final ruin. The rebel who wanted to sit on the highest throne ended up at the absolute bottom, a warning to the entire universe that nothing can stand against the throne of the Most High. The desert was peaceful. A man rested in his hammock. Suddenly,
Huh? What was that?
a loud scream broke the silence. Curious, he walked down a dark stone hallway. He carefully followed the loud and angry voice.
You stubborn beast! Move now! I won't! You can't make me! We have to go! Stop this! No! Are you deaf? Go now!
But to understand why he was talking with a donkey, we must go back to the kingdom of Moab. He wasn't looking at a normal army. He was looking at an entire nation on the move. Over 2 million men, women, and children. They were the Israelites. Decades ago, they were nothing but slaves, beaten and forced to make bricks in the mud of Egypt. But their God had broken their chains, parted the sea, and kept them alive in a deadly desert for 40 years. Now, they were finally marching toward their promised land. And anyone who stood in their way was destroyed. Just weeks ago, 2 mighty kings with huge armies had tried to block their path. The Israelites crushed them both. They swept through their lands, turning their great walled cities into dust, They took no prisoners. They left nothing behind. And now, this unstoppable flood of people had parked right on the edge of Balak's home, the land of Moab. King Balak stared down at the millions of campfires starting to light up the valley. His heart pounded with cold terror. He knew his soldiers did not stand a chance. If he tried to fight this massive crowd with normal swords and spears, his kingdom would be swallowed whole. He needed something far stronger than iron or horses. He needed a dark, spiritual power. He needed a curse. Because he could not win on the battlefield, Balak sent his top leaders to find a man named Balaam. Balaam was a famous prophet and sorcerer. Kings from all over the world knew his name. People believed that if Balaam blessed you, you would win every battle. But if he cursed you, your life was over. The leaders from Moab laid a fortune at Balaam's feet. They gave him a desperate plea from King Balak. "Please, come right now. Curse this giant crowd for me. They are too strong. If you curse them, maybe I can defeat them." This was the exact moment the trap was set. The gold was beautiful, and Balaam loved wealth. He wanted that treasure more than anything. But he also knew he had to ask God first. So, he told the men to stay the night while he prayed. That night, God came to Balaam in the dark, and God's voice was perfectly clear, leaving no room for questions. "You must not go with them. You must not curse those people because I have blessed them." The next morning, Balaam looked at the gold with a heavy heart. He looked at the men and sighed. "Go back to your home," he said. "God has refused to let me go with you." But King Balak was too afraid to take no for an answer. When his men returned empty-handed, he just sent more. He sent richer men. He sent his most powerful princes, and they brought a promise of so much wealth and honor that Balaam would never have to work another day in his life. When these new, important men found Balaam, they told him, "King Balak says, 'Do not let anything stop you from coming. I will give you anything you want. I will make you rich and famous. Just come and curse these people.'" Balaam knew the rules. He knew God had already given him a firm no. He even told the men out loud, "Even if King Balak gave me a house full of silver and gold, I cannot do anything against the command of my God." But Balaam did not send them away. Instead of telling them to leave, he stared at their fine clothes. He thought about the power. He thought about the huge reward. He wanted God to change his mind so badly. So, he told the men to stay one more night. He wanted to try and bend God's rules to fit his own greed. That night, God saw that Balaam's heart was already gone. He was obsessed with the money. So God told him, "If these men came to get you, go with them. But you will only speak the exact words I give you." Balaam did not waste a single second. He saddled his donkey the next morning and rode out with the rich men of Moab. In his mind, he was already spending the gold. He felt smart. He felt important. He thought he had played the game perfectly. But what he didn't know was that this greedy little journey was going to completely destroy his pride, put a flaming sword to his throat, and embarrass him in front of the entire world. God was angry that Balaam was going with such a selfish, greedy heart. Balaam was supposed to be a man of God, but he was acting like a man of gold. So God sent him an angel that only the donkey could see. The donkey saw the huge angel blocking the road. She saw the deadly sword shining in the sun. She knew that if she took one more step forward, she and her master would be killed instantly. So, to save Balaam's life, the brave donkey quickly turned off the road and walked into a rough dirt field. Balaam was furious. He was in a hurry to get his treasure. He did not see the angel. He just saw a stupid, stubborn animal ruining his grand journey. Scene. Balaam's face turns red with anger. He grabs his heavy wooden walking stick and hits the donkey hard on the back. He beat the donkey loudly and violently. He forced her out of the field and pushed her back onto the road. The donkey suffered the pain, but she kept walking to protect him. A little while later, the path grew very tight. They were walking through a narrow space between two vineyards, trapped between two hard stone walls. Suddenly, the donkey stopped again. The angel of the Lord had returned. He was standing right in the narrow path, holding the same deadly sword. This time, the donkey panicked. There was no open field to run into. To avoid the terrifying angel, she pressed her body hard against the stone wall on the side. But Balaam's leg was hanging down, and the donkey accidentally crushed his foot against the rough, jagged stones. "You useless beast!" Balaam yelled. He raised his stick and beat her again, even harder this time. Think about how crazy this was. Balaam was famous for being a spiritual man. He was a man who claimed to see the unseen world. Yet he was completely blind to the giant flaming angel standing right in front of his face. He only cared about his crushed foot and getting to his gold. Again, the loyal donkey took the beating. She saved the blind man's life a second time. The angel of the Lord moved ahead for a third time. He stood in a place so narrow, there was absolutely no room to turn. The path was completely, totally blocked. The donkey saw the angel. She looked to the right. She looked to the left. There was nowhere to run. She couldn't go into a field. She couldn't press against a wall. The sword was pointing right at them. So she simply folded her legs and lay down on the dusty ground underneath Balaam. Balaam completely lost his mind. His anger burned hotter than ever before. He stood over the poor, helpless donkey and beat her ruthlessly. He wanted to kill her right there on the road. But God was about to do something that had never happened before. God opened the mouth of the donkey. "What have I done to you to make you beat me these 3 times?" the donkey asked. Balaam was so blinded by his rage, he didn't even stop to realize how crazy this was. He was arguing with his pet. "You have made a fool out of me!" Balaam screamed back at the animal. "If I had a sword in my hand, I would kill you right now." The donkey just looked at him calmly. "Am I not your own donkey? The one you have always ridden your whole life? Have I ever done anything like this to you before?" Balaam stopped. He froze. The anger slowly drained from his face, replaced by a sudden, quiet confusion. "No," he admitted softly. Then the Lord opened Balaam's eyes. Suddenly, the great prophet could actually see. He saw the angel blocking the road. Balaam's legs gave out. He fell flat on his face into the dirt, shaking with absolute terror. The angel's voice boomed over him. "Why have you beaten your donkey these 3 times? I came here to stop you because your journey is selfish." The donkey saw me and turned away. If she had not turned away, I would have killed you by now, but I would have let her live. Balaam was crushed. His pride was completely broken. The great, powerful prophet had just been saved by a simple donkey. The animal was smarter and more spiritual than he was. "I have sinned," Balaam whispered into the dust, too afraid to look up. "I did not know you were standing in the road. If you are angry, I will go home right now." But the angel said to Balaam, "Go with the men, but you will only speak the exact words that I tell you to speak." Balaam finally arrived in the land of Moab. King Balak was thrilled. He quickly built 7 stone altars, sacrificed animals to his gods, and waited for Balaam to curse the Israelites. Balak was ready to watch his enemies suffer. Balaam stood on the high cliff. He took a deep breath. He opened his mouth to speak the curse, but God took complete control of his tongue. Balaam didn't speak words of death. He spoke words of beautiful life. "How can I curse a people that God has not cursed?" Balaam shouted loudly over the valley. "How can I attack those whom the Lord protects? I see a strong, beautiful people. Who could possibly count them all? They are blessed." Balak was furious. "What are you doing?" he cried. "I brought you here to curse my enemies, but you just blessed them." Balaam simply looked at him and replied, "I can only speak the words God puts in my mouth." But King Balak refused to give up. He thought maybe the magic would work better from a different spot. He took Balaam to a different mountain. He built 7 more altars. He made more sacrifices. He pointed down at the tents again. But again, Balaam opened his mouth, and a second, even stronger blessing poured out. "God is not a human. He does not lie," Balaam declared, his voice ringing with absolute power. "He does not change his mind. When he makes a promise, he keeps it. He has commanded me to bless these people. He has blessed them, and I cannot reverse it." Balak was pulling his hair out. "If you won't curse them, then at least don't bless them," he begged. But in his desperation, he tried one last time. He dragged Balaam to a 3rd mountain peak. For the 3rd time, God's Spirit came upon Balaam.
Millions of tents.
He looked down at the millions of tents of Israel.
So peaceful.
They looked so peaceful. They spread out like beautiful green valleys, like rich gardens planted beside a gentle river.
Your kingdom
"How
will.
beautiful are your tents, Israel!" Balaam cried out in a loud, joyful voice. King Balak's anger exploded. He clapped his hands together and yelled, "I called you here to curse my enemies, but you have blessed them 3 times. Get out of my sight and go home. I was going to make you rich, but your God has stolen your reward." Balak's evil plan was totally ruined. He tried to buy a dark curse with heavy chests of gold. But God's protection is not for sale. Down in the valley, the Israelites had absolutely no idea this intense drama was happening. They were just going about their normal day. Mothers were cooking dinner, fathers were resting, children were playing in the dirt. They did not know that high up on the mountain, an evil king and a greedy sorcerer were trying to destroy their entire future. They didn't know that God was fighting a massive spiritual battle for them in the unseen world. The story of Balaam and the talking donkey is a wild, beautiful reminder. God is completely in control of the story. No amount of money, no dark magic, and no evil king can ever reverse the blessing of God. God can use anything to protect his people. He can use an invisible angel with a flaming sword. He can take control of a corrupt, greedy man's mouth. He can even make a simple, tired donkey speak just to wake someone up to the truth. And sometimes, while you are simply resting quietly in the valley, God is high up on the mountain, silencing the enemies you didn't even know were there. What happens when a king chooses pride over God? 400 prophets begged the king to go to war, for they thought God would protect him. But one man, sitting alone in a prison cell, had a completely different answer. And the king was about to make the mistake of asking him. He wasn't famous. He wasn't powerful. He didn't have followers or a platform or anyone cheering his name. No crowds gathered when he spoke. No nobles invited him to dinner. No king gave him a seat at the table. He was just one man, alone in a prison cell, waiting to be called before 2 kings who sat in royal robes on golden thrones, waiting to walk into a room already filled with 400 men who had given their answer, waiting to do the one thing that everyone around him was begging him not to do: tell the truth. And when they finally came for him, the messenger who walked him to the court leaned in close on the way. His voice dropped to a whisper. He said, Look, every single prophet in there has already told the king he's going to win. Just say the same thing. Agree with them. Say what they want to hear. Walk out of there and go home." Micaiah kept walking. Then he stopped, turned, and looked the messenger in the eye. "I will only say what God tells me to say." To understand why this moment mattered so much, you have to understand the world Micaiah was walking into. King Ahab of Israel had it all. A palace built from ivory and cedar. A powerful army. A kingdom that stretched across the northern territory of Israel. Ahab had married a woman named Jezebel. She was a Phoenician princess, the daughter of a pagan king, and she had brought with her something far more dangerous than foreign customs or expensive jewelry. She brought her gods, the Baals, the altars, the priests of false religions who now had a home inside the king's own palace. And along with her gods, she brought something else, a deep and burning hatred for the prophets of the Lord. Under Jezebel's influence, the true prophets of God in Israel were not just ignored, they were hunted. Many were killed. The ones who survived did so by hiding. The king's court had been transformed. It was no longer a place where honest counsel was welcomed. It was no longer a place where a man could say, "This is wrong," without fearing what would happen next. It had become a place where only good news was allowed through the door. This is the world Micaiah lived in. This is the court he was about to walk into. The moment that set everything in motion began with a visit. Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah, the southern kingdom, had come to Samaria to see Ahab. The two kingdoms had been divided for years, but on this day, the two kings sat together in their royal robes at the threshing floor outside the city gates, surrounded by their officials and servants. The atmosphere was warm. The alliance felt promising. And then Ahab turned to his guest and posed a question that had clearly been on his mind for some time. There was a city, Ramoth-Gilead. It sat in a strategic location east of the Jordan River, and Ahab believed it rightfully belonged to Israel. The Arameans had been holding it, and Ahab felt that long enough was long enough. He looked at Jehoshaphat and asked, "Will you come with me to take it back?" Jehoshaphat was willing. He was in. But Jehoshaphat was a man who took his faith seriously, and before they made any final decision, he had one request. He said, "Let's ask what God says." It was a simple, reasonable ask. Seek God before marching into battle. Find out if this is actually what the Lord wants.
I am confused.
Ahab heard the request and agreed.
It will secure our borders.
So he gathered his prophets,
I see.
all 400 of them. Think about that number for a moment. 400 men who claimed to speak for God. 400 voices assembled before the two kings to give divine guidance on whether to march. They didn't take long to reach a conclusion. One by one, or perhaps all together, they gave their answer. Go up. Go to Ramoth-Gilead. Attack. You will win. The Lord will give it into your hands. The message was unanimous, and it was loud. One prophet, a man named Zedekiah, wanted to make sure everyone felt it. He fashioned iron horns and held them up in front of the kings, acting it out with his whole body. He said, "With these, you will gore the Arameans until they are completely destroyed." The room was electric. There was theater and excitement and total confidence. You could feel the momentum building. 400 prophets, all in agreement, all performing the same conclusion with energy and certainty. To any outside observer, it would have seemed settled. But something wasn't sitting right with Jehoshaphat. He couldn't put his finger on exactly what it was. Maybe it was how fast they all agreed. Maybe it was how eager they seemed. He turned to Ahab and asked a careful question. He said, "Is there not another prophet of the Lord here? Someone else we could ask?" It was a polite question, a gentle one, But what it meant underneath was clear, and Ahab's face changed when he heard it. Because there was one more. One man who hadn't been included in the gathering. One voice that Ahab had deliberately left out of the room. A man named Micaiah, son of Imlah. I hate that man. I hate him because he never prophesies anything good about me. Every single time, it's bad news. Jehoshaphat looked at him and said simply, "Don't say that. Send for him." So they sent for Micaiah, and in a prison cell somewhere in Samaria, a man who had probably been locked away for saying the wrong thing to the wrong king, stood up, straightened himself, and began walking toward the most important moment of his life. The messenger found him quickly. There was no long search. Everyone knew where Micaiah was. He was exactly where the king had put him, in a cell, under guard, surviving on bread and water. When the messenger came, Micaiah got up. No hesitation, no dragging of feet. He simply stood and followed the messenger toward the city gates, toward the threshing floor, toward two kings in royal robes. He said, "Every prophet in that room has already spoken in the king's favor. Every single one. Go in there, say the same thing, and you can walk back out. It's that simple." Micaiah stopped, turned, and spoke with the calm of a man who had already counted the cost. "As the Lord lives, I will say only what the Lord tells me to say." And then he kept walking. When Micaiah arrived, the scene was extraordinary. Two kings on thrones, Ahab in his royal robes, Jehoshaphat beside him. Behind them, hundreds of officials. Ahab asked his question straight. Should we go to Ramoth-Gilead to fight or hold back? And Micaiah told him to go. He used almost the exact words the 400 had used. Go up, attack. The Lord will give it into the king's hand. The room exhaled, but something was wrong, and that question revealed everything. Ahab already knew something was wrong. That's why he had kept Micaiah out of the room. That's why he hated him. Not because Micaiah was always wrong, because Micaiah was always right. I saw all of Israel scattered on the mountains, like sheep with no shepherd. The Lord said, "These people have no master. Let each one go home in peace." The room went cold. The king was going to die. The army would fall apart. This war was not a victory. It was a disaster walking toward them in broad daylight. But Micaiah wasn't finished. He described a vision of God seated on his throne, with the armies of heaven standing around him. God had asked, "Who will go and entice Ahab to march to Ramoth-Gilead and fall there?" One spirit stepped forward. "I will do it," he said. "I will be a lying spirit in the mouths of all his prophets." God said, "Go. You will succeed." Micaiah looked across at the 400 men who had declared victory so confidently. The Lord has put a lying spirit in the mouths of all your prophets. The Lord has spoken disaster against you. 400 prophets, one spirit behind all of them. Every word they had spoken flowing from the same poisoned source, and not one of them had even known it. Zedekiah moved first. He walked up and struck Micaiah across the face, then demanded, "Which way did the Spirit of the Lord go when he left me to speak to you?" Zedekiah already felt something, a doubt he couldn't name, a crack in his certainty. People who are completely sure of themselves don't need to hit anyone. Micaiah didn't flinch. "You will find out on the day you go to hide in an inner room. The day the battle turns. The day the news arrives. The day Zedekiah's confidence finally collapses and he finds himself hiding, hoping no one remembers the iron horns. That day was coming. Ahab gave the order. Take him back to prison, bread and water. Hold him there until I return safely from battle. As they led Micaiah away, he turned one last time. If you ever return safely, then the Lord has not spoken through me. Let all the people take note." And then they took him away. The two kings exchanged a glance. The 400 stood in their places, and Ahab made his decision. He was going to war. Ahab prepared for battle anyway, but Micaiah's warning followed him like a shadow. And for the first time, the king was afraid. So Ahab made a plan. If the enemy could not recognize the king, maybe death could not find him either. Jehoshaphat was told to wear the royal robes instead. The Aramean commanders had received only one order: find the king of Israel, kill the king. Then the battle exploded, and the moment they saw the royal robes, the enemy charged. Jehoshaphat cried out in terror, and suddenly the Arameans realized they had the wrong man. Ahab watched it happen and felt relief. He thought his disguise had worked, thought he had escaped prophecy. Then, somewhere in the chaos, one soldier pulled back his bow and released the arrow. The arrow flew blindly through the battlefield and found the only opening in Ahab's armor. The king of Israel collapsed inside his chariot. Blood filled the armor he trusted, and Ahab began to die. By evening, the king was dead, and the army scattered in fear. Exactly as Micaiah had said, every word came true. The king fell, and Israel went home without a shepherd. We never learn what happened to Micaiah afterward. No celebration, no apology, only truth. Micaiah could have agreed with the crowd, could have spoken comfortable lies, but instead, he chose truth. God did not need 400 voices. He needed one man willing to stand alone. And that one voice changed everything. What would you do if one day you discovered your entire nation was cursed, not by enemies, not by war, but by the sins hidden inside your own kingdom? When young King Josiah uncovered a forgotten book buried beneath the ruins of the temple, everything changed. Because the words inside were so terrifying, they made a king tear his own clothes in fear. He did not step into a peaceful world, nor did he grow up in a safe and peaceful time. Instead, he inherited a bloody future wrapped in violence and terror. At just 8 years old, a terrified boy stood inside the cold stone walls of a massive royal palace. The air still carried the sharp metallic smell of fresh copper from the blades used that morning. The heavy gold crown of Judah was lowered onto his small head, tilting slightly as he trembled. The throne he sat upon was literally stained with his father's unwashed blood, a dark reminder of the crown's terrible cost. "Long live the king!" The court officials cheered in unison, their voices echoing off the high stone ceilings, but their cheers were hollow, and their eyes gleamed with predatory malice. Behind their heavy silk robes, many hid daggers. One older advisor leaned down, his breath smelling of stale wine, and whispered in the boy's ear, "Do not worry, little king. Just sit still, sign the papers we give you, and you might live to see your next birthday." The boy's father, King Ammon, had just been brutally murdered by his own servants in a violent attack inside the palace. His grandfather, King Manasseh, had been an evil tyrant who filled the streets of Jerusalem with innocent blood. Now, the crown belonged to a child who was entirely alone. This 8-year-old boy was handed a collapsing kingdom, surrounded by hostile empires sharpening their spears. The people had completely forgotten who they were, and an ancient, terrifying curse was quietly ticking away under the palace floors. But a silent, dangerous fire was beginning to burn inside this child's heart. His name was Josiah. This is the story of how one young king looked directly into the jaws of absolute darkness and decided to tear them apart. To understand the dread hanging over Josiah's head, you have to look into the horrific world his family built. For nearly 60 years, Judah had plunged into a nightmare of human cruelty. King Manasseh did the unthinkable, forcefully dragging demonic gods into the very temple of the Lord, building occult altars inside the holy sanctuary and setting up twisted, monstrous statues of the goddess Asherah. Old men in the city streets would grasp their children's arms and whisper in terror. Keep your eyes on the ground when you pass the valley. Do not look at the smoke and cover your ears, or the screams will hunt you in your sleep. They were talking about the massive, fiery altars in the Valley of Hinnom, where parents were forced to surrender their crying babies to the red-hot iron hands of a monstrous fake god named Molech. The priests of Baal would beat their drums with furious speed to drown out the shrieks of the infants burning alive. The nation had turned its back on light. The holy laws given to Moses were completely wiped out. The holy scrolls were actively hunted down and destroyed until they were erased from public memory. A whole generation grew up never hearing how God saved them from Egypt. When Josiah's father, Amon, took the throne, he proudly continued this bloody legacy. Our fathers worshipped the stars, and the rivers ran with the blood of our enemies, Amon declared, raising a golden cup high. We will bleed this land until the old gods are satisfied. But his rule was so vicious that his own inner circle assassinated him in his bed after just 2 years. That is how an 8-year-old boy became the ruler of a haunted, broken land. For the first few years of his reign, Josiah was a puppet king, protected by a few remaining loyal advisors. But as the years bled into one another, the boy grew and his eyes opened. When he turned 16, he made a dangerous, defiant choice. He began to look for the true God of his ancestor, King David. He had no scriptures to guide him, only the quiet, forbidden whispers of a forgotten history. Late at night, Josiah would stand on the royal balcony, staring out at the pagan altars gleaming under the moonlight. There must be something more than these silent stone monsters, he whispered. A statue of stone cannot hear a child scream. The true creator must be out there, waiting in the silence, and I will find him. By the time he turned 20, his quiet searching erupted into an outright war against evil. Josiah stood before his military commanders, his voice dropping to a deadly tone. Wipe them out. Leave nothing standing. I want every altar smashed to dust, and I want it done immediately. But my king, one general stammered, the people love these gods. There will be an uprising. Josiah stepped forward. Let them curse us. Our hands are already stained with the blood of our children. If we do not destroy these monsters, they will destroy us. Josiah's soldiers swept through the nation like a storm. They smashed the idols into jagged shards with heavy iron sledgehammers and scattered the dust over the graves of the pagan priests. Josiah personally oversaw the destruction. Dig up their bones, he shouted to his men. Burn the bones of those false prophets on their own broken altars. Let this land know their gods are dead. The soldiers did exactly that, permanently defiling the pagan sites and breaking the spiritual stronghold that had gripped the nation for decades. When Josiah was 26, he turned his eyes toward the grandest building in Jerusalem, the Temple of the Lord. For decades, this once glorious stone house had been neglected and vandalized, its hidden rooms filled with mounds of garbage, dirt, and occult items. Josiah summoned his helper, Shaphan, and the high priest, Hilkiah. Take this royal silver from the treasury, Josiah commanded. Hire the best masons and builders. Tell them to clear the filth and restore the house of the living God. Do not spare any expense. The work began immediately. But as the workers were clearing deep mounds of debris in a dark, sealed sanctuary, Hilkiah's hand hit something solid, hidden behind a false stone wall. It was a scroll, ancient, heavy, and wrapped tightly in rotting linen cloth. It had been buried under the ruins of neglect for over half a century. Hilkiah carefully pulled it from the darkness, blowing the thick dust from its surface. Shaphan, come quickly! Hilkiah whispered in pure shock, his hands trembling. Look at these words. I have found the book of the law in the house of the Lord. Is it truly the book of Moses? Shaphan asked, his voice cracking with awe. It is, Hilkiah breathed. It is the living word of our God. It was the book of Deuteronomy, containing the binding covenant between the Almighty and His people, detailing the terrifying bloody curses for betrayal. Shaphan took the heavy scroll and raced back to the palace. King Josiah sat on his throne, expecting a standard update on construction costs. Instead, Shaphan stood before him with a pale face, holding the scroll tightly against his chest. My king, Hilkiah the priest, has delivered a book to me, a book found in the deep walls of the temple. Read it to me now, the king commanded. Shaphan unrolled the heavy parchment and began to read out loud. As the ancient words echoed through the cold stone halls, a suffocating weight filled the room. The book spoke of a jealous God who would unleash a furious, unquenchable judgment on those who abandoned him. Shaphan's voice shook. The Lord will bring a nation against you from far away, a nation whose language you will not understand. They will devour your crops until you are destroyed. You will become an object of horror. Josiah listened intently, every word piercing his soul. He saw the child sacrifices of his grandfather and realized they were a condemned people standing on the edge of absolute ruin. Josiah did not make excuses. With a sharp cry of agony, the most powerful man in Judah grabbed the collar of his royal robes and ripped them straight down the middle to his waist. No! He screamed, falling to his knees on the cold marble floor, weeping in pure terror. Tearing your clothes was the ultimate sign of absolute horror. Go! Josiah commanded his officials, his voice cracking with panic. Find a way to ask the Lord what we should do. Pray for me and for the survivors. The wrath of the Lord burning against us is absolute. The king's officials ran frantically through the streets of Jerusalem, seeking out a true prophet, a wise woman named Huldah. They burst into her home, presenting the king's desperate plea. Huldah looked at the messengers with cold gravity. This is what the Lord God of Israel says. Tell the man who sent you that I am going to bring terrible disaster on this place and its people. Every single curse written in the book will come to pass. Because they have abandoned me. The messengers gripped their cloaks in fear, but Huldah wasn't finished. But tell the king of Judah this. Because your heart was soft and responsive, and you humbled yourself before God. Because you tore your robes and wept in my presence, I have surely heard you. Therefore, I will gather you to your fathers, and you will be buried in peace. Your eyes will not see the horrific disaster that I'm bringing upon the city. When the officials delivered the prophetess's words, Josiah did not break down in relief. Knowing that doom was inevitable did not make him stop. It made him move with frantic speed. If he only had a limited window of time before the fire of judgment fell, he was going to spend every second dragging his people out of the dark. The king called an emergency mega assembly, ordering every single citizen to gather at the repaired temple. A vast sea of anxious faces looked up at their 26-year-old ruler. Josiah stood tall by the grand royal pillar, reading the heavy scroll himself. Listen to the words of the covenant, his voice boomed. He read every single word of the lost book, letting the weight of the curses hit their ears. When he finished, the king raised his hand toward heaven. I promise, before the living God, to follow him with all my heart and all my soul. I swear to obey every commandment written in this book with all my might. Who stands with me? The high priest stepped forward, followed by the elders, and then the entire crowd stood to their feet, their voices rising like thunder. We swear to keep the covenant. We stand with the king. Then, the ultimate purge began, a brutal, scorched earth campaign against the occult forces. Drag every single statue and altar dedicated to Baal and Asherah out of the temple, Josiah commanded. Burn them to ashes outside the city gates! He fired the corrupt priests on the spot. Next, he marched his army down to the horrifying valley of Hinnom. Smash it all! Josiah roared, swinging a hammer himself. Shatter the bronze statues of Molech! Fill this entire valley with human bones! Let this place be defiled forever, so that no man or woman can ever murder a child in the name of a god again! The soldiers tore into the pagan shrines with aggressive fury. He destroyed the occult houses operating inside the temple gates and ground the altars built by his grandfather into fine dust, throwing the debris into the valley to be washed away. He even marched his troops north into enemy territory to the ancient occult center of Bethel. Shatter that golden calf, he ordered. A local priest ran out screaming, "You cannot touch this altar! It is protected by ancient curses!" Josiah walked right past him, struck the altar with his iron weapon, and ordered his men to tear down the high place. He burned the bones of dead false priests on their own ruined altars to permanently erase the spiritual stain from the earth. When the land was clean, Josiah issued a final command. Celebrate the Passover to the Lord your God, exactly as it is written in this book of the covenant. For centuries, the Passover had been completely neglected or celebrated half-heartedly, but not this time. The king personally provided 30,000 lambs and goats from his own royal herds. Massive fires were lit across Jerusalem, casting a warm glow over the stone walls. The Levites and the singers screamed praises into the dark night sky. Old men wept as they ate, passing the meat to their grandchildren and whispering, "This is what the light feels like. We were dead in the dark, but the king brought us back." The ancient scriptures record a bone-chilling summary of that night. Josiah ruled with iron righteousness for 31 years, holding back the storm of judgment through the sheer force of his own devotion. His life ended tragically on a blood-soaked battlefield at Megiddo, trying to stop an invading Egyptian army from marching through his territory. As he lay dying from an arrow wound, his servants wept around him. "What will become of us now, my king?" his servant wept. Josiah looked up at the sky, his breathing shallow. "Keep the book," he whispered. "Do not let the darkness back in."
And the prophet Jeremiah.
His death was mourned by the entire nation, and the prophet Jeremiah wrote songs of grief for him. When the ancient historians looked back at the long line of rulers, they penned these immortal words about him. Before him, there was no king like him, who turned to the Lord with all his heart and with all his soul and with all his might, according to all the law of Moses. Josiah's story shows us a powerful truth. You cannot kill the truth. People can try to bury it under years of garbage, But all it takes is one person willing to dig through the rubble, look directly into the eyes of the darkness and say, "This ends now." You're never defined by the scars of your past. Stand up. Seek the truth. Break the generational curses and let the light back in.
Hey guys, these videos takes many hours of hard work. If you could please like the video and subscribe. Also, we want to see which countries our videos reach. If you could please comment which country you're watching from, it'll truly help us. See you till the next video.